AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after my parents promised her I would. My 32M younger sister, Allie, 28F, is getting married in November. She's always been the golden child in our family, and I know everyone says that. But in our case, it's ridiculous. Ever since we were kids, my parents went out of their way to excuse anything she did and somehow make everything I did seem either inadequate or selfish. I've long accepted that we're just different people, and I'm not the favorite, but this situation feels like something I need outside perspectives on. I work in software development and have done pretty well for myself. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm financially stable, live in a mid-sized house I bought 3 years ago, and don't carry any debt beyond my mortgage. My sister, on the other hand, has had a more chaotic path. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but she's floated between jobs, moved back home multiple times, and, to be blunt, doesn't handle money responsibly. About 6 months ago, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Jake. They've been together about 2 years, and while I don't dislike him, I wouldn't say I know him well either. They decided they wanted a dream wedding with around 200 guests at this very expensive vineyard venue outside our city. They're planning the whole thing with all the bells and whistles, live band, plated dinner, designer dress, open bar, the works. The trouble started when my parents sat me down during one of our monthly family dinners and asked if I'd be open to helping Allie with her wedding costs. I asked them what they meant, and they said, just contributing a little toward the venue or maybe covering the bar tab, whatever you're comfortable with. Now, this dinner was back in December when they first asked. I was polite, but told them I'd think about it. I never gave them an answer, partly because I was waiting for more information, and partly because I didn't feel responsible for paying for her wedding. I assumed they would follow up, but they never did. Fast forward early March, and I get a phone call from Allie, crying. She tells me she'd just gotten off the phone with the venue and that her deposit bounced. I told her I was sorry to hear that, and she said, I don't understand. Mom and Dad said you were paying for it. I told her no, I never agreed to anything. She got quiet, then hung up. A few hours later, my parents call, furious. Apparently, they told Allie months ago that I had volunteered to pay for the venue, which is around $18,000, and that it was all taken care of. When I asked them why they would say that when I never agreed to it, my dad said, well, you make more than enough, and you're not married or anything, so we figured you'd want to help out. I told them point blank that I wasn't paying for her wedding, that if they wanted her to have a $40,000 event, they needed to figure it out, not dump it on me without my consent. My mom started crying and said I was being cold and turning my back on family. I asked why they couldn't take out a loan or downsize the wedding. My dad said they already paid for her college, and it was unfair to expect them to pay for both. For the record, I paid for my own college. I had scholarships, worked during school, and still came out with about $40,000 in loans that I only finished paying off last year. Since that phone call, things have exploded. Allie posted some cryptic stuff on Facebook like, you think you know people, and then they abandon you at your most important moment, and love shouldn't come with a price tag. She hasn't named me, but it's pretty obvious who it's about. A few mutual cousins have reached out to ask what's going on. I've told them the short version. My parents told her I'd pay, I never agreed to, and now everyone's mad at me. I thought things might cool off, but then last week I was uninvited from the bridal shower to avoid drama. My mom said it wasn't personal, but that it would be better if I didn't come. My dad texted me after saying, I hope you're happy. You've embarrassed this family. I'm honestly shocked. I've always been kind of the background character in our family dynamic, and now suddenly I'm the villain in this whole production. I never promised anyone money. I wasn't even asked in a real, respectful way. My parents made an assumption, told my sister a lie, and now expect me to foot the bill so they don't look bad. I've asked a couple of friends, and they're kind of split. Some say I could afford it, and it's not worth the drama, and it would be a nice gesture. Others say it's totally messed up, and I should hold my ground. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after my parents told her I would? Some extra context. I've helped Allie out financially before. When she lost her job 2 years ago, I paid her rent for 3 months. I've also co-signed a car loan for her once, which she later defaulted on. I ended up having to pay off the balance just to save my credit. My parents have a history of this kind of behavior. When I bought my house, They asked if I'd let Allie move into the guest room temporarily. She stayed 8 months, never paid rent or utilities, and left without cleaning up. I had to hire a cleaner and repaint the room. Allie and Jake both have jobs now, but neither of them is great with money. Jake's been through 2 layoffs, and Allie has a habit of impulse spending. Their combined income is maybe $70,000 a year, so I don't understand why they planned such an elaborate wedding in the first place. My parents aren't poor, but they're not wealthy either. They live comfortably, but have made it clear that they're not going to help either of us financially beyond certain life events. Apparently, my sister's wedding counts as one, but only if I pay for it. I'm honestly wondering if I should just write the whole family off for a while. But it feels extreme. At the same time, I'm tired of being treated like a walking checkbook just because I don't have kids or a spouse. So, am I the asshole? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to take care of my husband's ex-wife's child during a family emergency and potentially destroying our relationship. This is a long one, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything, so bear with me. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Derek, 39M, for 4 years. We met 6 years ago, dated for about 1.5 years, and then got married after a short engagement. Derek has a son, Mason, 12M, from a previous marriage. His ex-wife, Layla, 36F, and I have always had a civil but distant relationship. We aren't friends, but we get along for the sake of Mason. She's remarried with a daughter, Ava, 3F, from her new husband. The key part of this whole mess is that Ava is not Derek's child. But over the past couple of years, things have started to blur in a way that's made me uncomfortable. Derek and I don't have children together yet, though we've been trying. I had a miscarriage last year that really took a toll on me. Since then, my energy and patience have been running low, and I've been trying to focus on healing emotionally. Derek was supportive at first, but gradually I noticed he became more distant. He throws himself into anything involving Mason and, oddly enough, sometimes Ava. At first, I thought I was just being sensitive. I told myself, it's good that he's involved with Mason and is willing to be around Ava, so there's no drama. But over time, it started getting weird. He started picking Ava up from daycare as a favor to Layla and her husband when they were working late. He'd take Mason and Ava out together, movies, parks, etc., and talk about them like they were both his kids. He even started calling them the kids when talking about weekend plans like, I'm taking the kids to the zoo. I brought it up once, and he brushed me off, saying I was being jealous and that Ava is part of Mason's life, so he just wants her to feel included. Okay, fine. I'll let that go. Then, 2 weeks ago, a situation came up that really pushed me over the edge. Derek's father had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital in a city 4 hours away. It was obviously very serious, and Derek wanted to leave immediately to be with his dad. I told him, of course, and I would handle things here at home. That's when he dropped the bomb. He asked if I could watch both Mason and Ava for the weekend while he was away. I said, wait. Ava too? He said yes, Layla and her husband had a last-minute trip, and they asked him if he could take Ava, and since he couldn't, he figured I could. I stared at him for a good 10 seconds before saying, you want me to babysit your ex-wife's daughter while you're gone? He said, she's Mason's sister. You know how close they are? It would be easier on Mason if they stayed together. I said, I'm happy to take care of Mason, but Ava is not my responsibility. Derek got frustrated and said I was being selfish and inconsiderate, especially during a family emergency. I reminded him that Ava is not our family. She is Layla's and her husband's responsibility. I don't have any kind of parental or emotional connection to her. I don't dislike her, but I don't feel comfortable being the fallback babysitter, especially without being asked directly by her parents. He accused me of punishing Ava for something that wasn't her fault. I said this wasn't about punishing anyone. It's about boundaries. If Layla wanted me to babysit her daughter, she could have asked me herself, not passed it through her ex-husband like I'm some kind of default option. He left angry, and I stayed home with Mason. Layla ended up finding someone else to watch Ava. Apparently, she was annoyed that I said no, and according to Derek, she called him later that night to say that I was making things harder than they need to be. When he came back 2 days later, he barely spoke to me. I tried to talk to him about it again, but he shut me down and said he didn't see the big deal. Since then, things have been tense. He's been sleeping in the guest room. When I tried to explain how it made me feel to be placed in that position, especially without being consulted, he told me I lack maternal instincts and that maybe our trying for a baby had been a mistake. That absolutely crushed me. I cried the entire night. It's been a week, and we're basically walking around each other like roommates. I tried to talk to my sister about it, and she was kind of on his side. She said that if I ever do become a mom, I'll realize how siblings shouldn't be separated and that it takes a village. But I don't think that applies when the child isn't even related to me in any way and wasn't dropped off with any real communication or consent. My mom, however, said she thinks I was right to stand my ground and that Derek is getting too involved in a family dynamic that doesn't concern him anymore. I'm torn. I don't want to start this war over a toddler, but it feels like this is a symptom of a larger problem. Derek is so involved in his ex-wife's new family that I feel like I'm the outsider in my own marriage. It's like he's emotionally adopted Ava, and somehow I'm the one being seen as the unreasonable one for not going along with it. Was I wrong to refuse to babysit? Would it have really been that big a deal to help out just for the weekend? I don't know. Part of me feels guilty, but a bigger part of me feels like I've been steadily erased from my own life and marriage, and this was just the tipping point. So, AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé use my lake house for their wedding after what she did at mine. I, 35F, own a small lake house that I inherited from my grandmother. It's not massive or extravagant, but it's beautiful and peaceful, surrounded by woods, right on the water, and perfect for intimate gatherings. It's always been a special place for me, even more so since I spent every summer there with my grandma growing up. When she passed, she left it to me in her will, and I've done everything I can to maintain it with her spirit in mind. 3 years ago, my husband Aaron, 37M, and I got married. It was a small wedding, about 40 guests, and we held at the lake house. It was the most perfect day. Everything was personal and homemade. I did a lot of the planning myself, and my best friend catered as a wedding gift. Aaron's brother is a musician and played our first dance song live on his acoustic guitar. It felt like home. My younger sister, Kayla, 29F, was my maid of honor. At the time, she was single and very vocal about how weddings were overrated, a waste of money, and just a performative circus. I always knew Kayla had strong opinions, but I honestly didn't realize how resentful she was about weddings until mine. A few weird things happened that day, and at the time I brushed them off. Like, she was 45 minutes late to the venue and walked in as my photographer was trying to do bridal party shots, flustered and unapologetic. She gave a maid of honor speech that was not exactly glowing. It was more about how love is unpredictable and marriage isn't always necessary to prove commitment. People were polite, but I could see the discomfort in some guests' faces. I chalked it up to nerves and her general cynicism. But the real issue came during the reception. At some point during the night, Kayla decided to pull Aaron aside and tell him that I wasn't always the person I pretended to be. She told him about some stupid things I did in college, a few drunken nights, and a short-lived situationship with a married teaching assistant, which I confessed him years ago, by the way. Aaron was blindsided and upset, not because of the info, but because of the timing and delivery. He told me about it the next morning, and I was devastated. I confronted Kayla, and she claimed she was just looking out for him and thought he had the right to know. I told her she had absolutely no right to sabotage my wedding night like that, and that it was cruel. We didn't speak for nearly a year afterward. Eventually, she apologized. She said she was dealing with a lot of personal anger at the time and was jealous, not of me specifically, but of the idea that someone in our family could be loved that wholly when she felt alone and behind in life. I accepted her apology because she's my sister and I do believe people can grow. We've rebuilt a decent relationship, although there are still parts of me that haven't forgotten that day. Fast forward to a few months ago. Kayla got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, Matt. I was genuinely happy for her and offered to help her plan if she needed anything. About a month after the engagement, she asked if they could use the lake house for their wedding. She talked about how meaningful it would be to her to have a quiet, private ceremony and how she always remembered how beautiful my wedding was. I didn't say no immediately. I told her I needed time to think about it. I spoke with Aaron, who was firmly against it. He's forgiven her too, in theory, but says he doesn't trust that she won't create some kind of scene again or bring up past drama. He also reminded me of how hard we worked to fix things after our wedding and how triggering it might be to hold hers in the same place. After 2 weeks, I told Kayla that I wasn't comfortable letting her use the lake house. I told her I wanted her wedding to be beautiful, but that place has personal significance to me, and given how things played out at mine, I wasn't ready to open that space to her. I offered to help her look for a similar venue, maybe even help pay for one as a gesture of good faith, but I stood firm on the lake house. She completely lost it. She called me selfish, accused me of holding the past over her head forever, and said I was gatekeeping happiness. She told our parents I was punishing her for being emotionally unwell in the past, and that I was being a control freak. My parents are split. Dad says it's my property and my choice. Mom thinks I'm being petty and should let it go already. Kayla has now uninvited me from her wedding entirely unless I change my mind. I don't want to escalate things further, and part of me wonders if I'm letting old wounds guide my decisions. But at the same time, I can't forget how small she made me feel on the most important day of my life. The lake house is more than just a location. It's a safe space full of memories of my grandmother and now my marriage, and I don't know if I can trust Kayla to honor it. So, AITA for not letting my sister use my lake house for her wedding, even after she apologized for what happened at mine. AITA for not inviting my brother to my wedding because of a prank he pulled 9 years ago. This has been tearing my family apart for weeks, and I'm either going crazy or I've been right all along, and everyone else is trying to gaslight me. So, some backstory. I, 28M, got married 2 weeks ago to the love of my life, Natalie, 27F. We've been together for 6 years and engaged for nearly 2. We had a beautiful outdoor wedding, 150 guests, pretty casual but still elegant. We spent months planning it, paid for most of it ourselves, and made it very clear we wanted a drama-free day. No surprises, no speeches that weren't pre-approved, nothing spontaneous. We want a piece. Here's where it gets messy. I have one sibling, my older brother, Max, 32M. Max is the funny guy in the family. He's the prankster. Always has been. Growing up, it was harmless stuff, putting salt in my cereal, telling people my first kiss was our neighbor's dog, etc. But as we got older, the pranks got meaner. Like convincing my first girlfriend that I'd cheated on her. He confessed it was a joke a week later. Or accidentally texting my boss a meme with a really inappropriate caption that was meant for someone else. The worst one, though, the one I never really forgave him for, was when I was 19. I just got into my dream school. I had a letter of admission, financial aid was sorted, and I was ready to leave in a month. It was a huge deal. No one in our family had ever gone to a college like that. I worked my ass off for it. The day before my move, I got a call from the admissions office saying there'd been a mistake with my documents and my spot had been revoked. I freaked out. I cried in front of my whole family, broke down. It took me 3 hours to find out that Max had spoofed the number and made the call himself. He recorded the whole thing and sent it to his friends, thinking it was hilarious. I was humiliated. I didn't speak to him for nearly a year after that. My parents begged me to forgive him. He made a half-assed apology saying he didn't realize how far it would go, and that it was just a joke. That phrase, just a joke, became his get-out-of-jail-free card. Every time he did something hurtful, that's what he said. Eventually, I moved on, but I never trusted him again. Fast forward to my engagement. Max assumed he would be my best man. I told him no, and he acted shocked. I was firm. I told him he could come to the wedding, but he wouldn't have any major role. He sulked, but eventually said okay. Then, a few months before the wedding, I found out from a mutual friend that Max had been planning a little stunt at the reception. Nothing too detailed, just that it involved a slideshow and was meant to be funny and lighthearted. I confronted him, and he said it was just going to be a funny video to celebrate my life and how far I'd come. I asked him to show it to me beforehand. He refused, said it would ruin the surprise. That was the final straw. I told him he was no longer invited. I didn't trust him. I didn't want to risk our wedding day being ruined. My parents flipped out. They said I was being unforgiving and dramatic. That Max just has a weird sense of humor. I reminded them of the college prank. My mom said, that was almost 10 years ago. My dad added, it's time to let it go. I didn't budge. I told them if they kept pushing it, they wouldn't be welcome either. That shut them up, though they were clearly pissed. The day of the wedding came and went. It was perfect. No drama, no unexpected disasters, just love and laughter. Now, though, the fallout has been brutal. Max has been telling everyone I'm vindictive and stuck in the past. My parents keep asking when I'll apologize and make amends. Even my aunt, who I'm usually close with, said that banning my own brother from the wedding was a nuclear option and that I need therapy if I'm still holding on to teenage trauma. Natalie is on my side, for the record. She said if I let Max come and he had done something, I would have never forgiven myself. She saw how long it took for me to rebuild trust after everything. She thinks I did the right thing. But now that the wedding is over, and I'm watching my family slowly turn against me, I'm starting to wonder, was I really too harsh? Should I have just let him come with strict conditions? Was I the asshole for trying to protect what was supposed to be the best day of my life? Because here's the thing, I wanted Max to be there. Not the prankster, not the funny guy, but my brother. I kept hoping he would come to me, seriously, and say, look, I get it. I messed up. I won't pull anything. I just want to be there for you. But he never did. Not once. It was always, come on, it'll be fun, or you're overreacting. That's not remorse. That's manipulation. Still, maybe I should have taken the high road. Maybe keeping him out just gave him more ammunition to make me look bad. Maybe I let a grudge win. So, Reddit, AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her emotional support snake to my wedding, even though it means she might not attend. My 27F wedding is in July, and I'm marrying the love of my life, Josh, 29M. We've been together for 5 years, got engaged last summer, and are now deep into wedding planning. The venue is a gorgeous old vineyard with both indoor and outdoor spaces, and the guest list is sitting at about 130 people, mostly friends and family. My younger sister, Lana, 24F, has always been a bit eccentric. She's the artsy, free-spirited, deeply into alternative lifestyles kind of person. I love her, but we're polar opposites in most ways. She dresses like a Renaissance fair every day, lives in a communal house with 5 other people and a goat, and is always pushing boundaries in ways that usually amuse me, but sometimes frustrate me. About a year ago, Lana adopted a ball python named Yoko. She insists Yoko is her emotional support animal and takes her nearly everywhere. I'm not joking. She wears the snake like a scarf to grocery stores, cafes, even to our grandma's 80th birthday dinner. I've seen people freak out in public when they realize she has a snake wrapped around her neck, and while Lana usually laughs it off, I've told her multiple times that not everyone is comfortable around snakes and that she should be more considerate. She says that Yoko helps her with anxiety and grounds her emotionally, which I'm not questioning, but she doesn't have any official documentation or anything. It's not a service animal in the legal sense. When it came time to plan the wedding, I was super conscious of making it inclusive and comfortable for everyone. We're having a non-religious ceremony, plenty of vegetarian and gluten-free options, accessible seating, the works. I also made it clear in the invites that pets aren't allowed, with the exception of certified service animals, which is standard. A few people even checked with me about guide dogs or therapy dogs, and I said of course those are welcome. About a month ago, Lana called me and casually mentioned she'd be bringing Yoko to the wedding, saying she'd keep her chill and out of the way during the ceremony and reception. I thought she was joking. I laughed and said something like, yeah, no way you're bringing a snake to my wedding. She went silent and then said, I'm serious. I need her with me. I told her flat out that it wouldn't be appropriate and that she could either come without the snake or not come at all. I didn't say it cruelly, but I was firm. I thought that would be the end of it. Cue the drama. Lana has since gone on a tirade across social media, posting long stories about how I'm discriminating against people with invisible disabilities, how emotional support animals are valid, how I'm prioritizing aesthetics over her mental health, and how families should support each other unconditionally. She didn't name me directly at first, but everyone knows it's about me, and now I've got cousins, old college friends, even mutual acquaintances messaging me asking what's going on. Some are sympathetic and think Lana is being extreme. Others are telling me I'm being unnecessarily rigid and that it wouldn't be a big deal to just let her bring the snake, especially since it would mean so much to her. One person even said I should get over my snake phobia, which I don't even have. I just think it's not appropriate at a formal event with food, drinks, and 130 guests. My parents are split. My mom thinks Lana is overreacting and should respect my wishes, especially since it's my wedding. My dad, who tends to avoid confrontation, suggested I just let her bring the snake if it keeps the peace. Josh thinks the whole thing is ridiculous and said if someone brought a snake to his cousin's wedding, it would have been the main thing everyone remembered, and not in a good way. What really bothered me is that last week, Lana sent me a very long message, like essay length, explaining how I've never really accepted her for who she is, how I've always been the perfect daughter, while she's been the black sheep, and how this wedding is just another example of me pushing her aside to keep up appearances. She said if Yoko isn't welcome, she won't come, and that she hopes I have fun celebrating my superficial life with superficial people. I haven't responded. I cried after reading it. I really did want her to be there. I had even asked her to do a reading during the ceremony, which I've since removed from the schedule. I'm trying not to take her words too personally, but it's hard. I don't want to be the kind of bride who makes everything about herself, but at the same time, this is my wedding. I genuinely think most people would be uncomfortable if a snake was slithering around, even if it was just around Lana's shoulders. It's not about a snake phobia or not supporting mental health needs. It's about basic boundaries and setting the tone for the kind of event I want. I wouldn't want someone bringing a tarantula or a ferret or even a dog if it wasn't a service animal. But I also don't want to be the sister who pushed her sibling out of one of the biggest days of her life over a pet. So now I'm stuck. The wedding is in 10 weeks, and Lana still hasn't said if she's coming or not. She's made it clear she won't come without Yoko. I've left the door open for her to change her mind, but I'm not bending on the no-snake rule. A few of my friends think I should cave just to avoid the conflict, but I feel like if I do, I'll be resenting Lana for hijacking my wedding over a snake. I'm tired of defending this decision, and now I'm starting to question whether I'm overreacting. Would it really ruin the day? Or am I right to stand my ground? AITA? AITA for refusing to give my daughter her college fund because she eloped with her boyfriend behind our backs? I, 48F, am the mother of a 19-year-old daughter, Claire. She is my only child, and her father, my ex-husband, is not in the picture. He left when Claire was 3, and I've raised her on my own ever since. It's always been just the two of us. I worked hard to give her a good life, sacrificing a lot along the way, so she wouldn't have to struggle like I did. Ever since Claire was born, I've been putting money away for her college. Not just a few hundred here and there, but real savings. I started with a small education account, but after a few promotions and some careful investing, I built up a solid college fund. Over $100,000 by the time she graduated high school. She always knew this money was there for her, and I made it clear it was for education only. Claire's always been smart and ambitious. She got into a great university across the country, with plans to major in environmental science. I was proud of her, and honestly, it felt like all the hard years were worth it. We toured the campus together, we picked out her dorm furniture, and I cried when I dropped her off. A few weeks into her first semester, she called and told me she was seeing a guy she met at orientation. His name is Jake, and he's 23. I didn't think much of it at the time. New friends, new experiences, whatever. But within 2 months, things got strange. She stopped calling as much, and when she did, she seemed distracted. I chalked it up to stress or homesickness. Then, in early December, she came home for winter break and told me she was thinking of taking a pause from school to find herself. I was stunned. We talked. I listened. I tried to understand, but I also told her I didn't support the idea. I reminded her how competitive her field is and how hard it would be to jump back in. She said she needed time to figure out who she really was, and I didn't want to push too hard, so I let the conversation go. She went back to campus in January. 2 weeks later, I got a text that she was dropping out. No phone call, no explanation, just a text. I called her over and over. Finally, she picked up and told me she and Jake were getting married and moving to Colorado, where he had some opportunities, and she was going to support him while she figured out what she wanted. I was speechless. They'd known each other for months. He had no degree, no job lined up, and she was throwing away her education to follow him across the country. I told her she was making a mistake. She accused me of trying to control her. That was the last conversation we had for weeks. Then, last month, I got a wedding announcement in the mail. A cheap postcard with a blurry picture of them in some courthouse, both wearing jeans. Mr. and Mrs. Jake, last name, married March 5th. No invitation. No heads up. Just a mailer like I was some acquaintance. I was devastated. I felt completely shut out of her life. A few days later, she finally called, chirpy and casual, asking if I could transfer the college fund to her since she wasn't going to school anymore. She said they wanted to use it for a down payment on a house or maybe to travel for a bit. I laughed. I thought she was joking. When I realized she wasn't, I told her absolutely not. I said that money was for her education. It had always been for her education. And if she wasn't going to college, it would stay where it was. I told her if someday she went back to school, we could revisit the conversation, but I wasn't handing over 6 figures so she and her new husband could figure things out in Colorado. She lost it, screamed at me that I was punishing her for being in love, that I was holding money over her head to manipulate her, that it was her money and I had no right to keep it from her. I told her very calmly that she was legally an adult, free to make her own choices, but choices come with consequences. She chose to leave school and get married without telling me. She chose to cut me out, and she can't expect my financial support now that she's decided to live her life on her terms. She hung up on me, and I haven't heard from her since, but I've heard from plenty of others. Her husband messaged me on Facebook, saying I was destroying our future over pride. A few of her friends, girls I knew from her high school, have texted saying I should be happy she's happy. One even said I was a narcissist for using money to control my adult daughter. My own sister called and said maybe I should just give her a portion of the fund to keep the peace. But here's the thing. It's not about the money. It's about the principle. I saved that money so my daughter could build a life of independence and security. Not to bankroll a marriage she ran into without a second thought. Not to reward impulsiveness. I still love her more than anything. If she called tomorrow and said she wanted to go back to school, I'd be the first to cheer her on. But right now, I feel like I'm being treated like an ATM machine that's malfunctioning because I have boundaries. The whole thing has made me question everything. Maybe I was too hard on her. Maybe I made education into some kind of moral pedestal and didn't listen to what she really wanted. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am punishing her for not living life the way I planned. But I also feel like if I cave now, I'm telling her that choices don't matter, that she can betray my trust and still expect support. That being an adult doesn't mean being responsible. So here I am, stuck in this awful limbo where I feel like I've lost my daughter and I'm the villain for drawing a line. I don't know if I did the right thing or if I just guaranteed she'll never speak to me again. AITA? AITA for canceling my daughter's wedding just 3 weeks before the big day after discovering what she and her fiancé did to my wife. I, 56, have a daughter, Cassie, 27F, from my first marriage. Her mother and I divorced when she was 10. I won't go into all the details, but the divorce wasn't bitter. We just weren't right for each other. Cassie lived primarily with her mom, but spent summers and every other holiday with me. When she was 14, I met my now wife, Sarah, 48F, and we got married 3 years later. Sarah doesn't have children of her own, and while she never tried to be a mom to Cassie, she's always been kind, respectful, and supportive. Cassie and Sarah got along decently well. Not best friends, but polite, warm. Cassie would buy her a birthday card, and they'd talk when she came to visit. That kind of thing. It wasn't until Cassie left for college that their relationship cooled off. I don't know why. And when I'd ask Cassie, she'd just say she's busy or tired. I chalked it up to adult life taking over. Fast forward to this past year. Cassie got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Jamie, 30M. I was thrilled. Jamie seemed like a solid guy. Quiet, polite, well-mannered. They planned a wedding with about 150 guests. Since Cassie wanted a larger event and Jamie's parents couldn't contribute much financially, I offered to pay for most of it. Venue, catering, decorations, you name it. I also set aside money for their honeymoon. In total, I was putting in around $40,000, which is a lot, but Cassie is my only child and I wanted her day to be special. Things started feeling off about 2 months before the wedding. Sarah was quietly sad, and I could tell something was bothering her. After some gentle prying, she finally broke down and told me that she wasn't invited to the wedding ceremony. Only the reception. I thought she had misunderstood. Maybe there was a mix-up or something. But no. Sarah showed me the invitation she received. It was for the reception only. No ceremony. I asked to see mine. Mine included both the ceremony and the reception. I was stunned. I called Cassie right away and asked about it. She hesitated and then admitted that yes, Sarah wasn't invited to the ceremony. Just the reception. She tried to play it off as not a big deal and said that the ceremony was going to be intimate and just close family. I reminded her that Sarah is family. She's been my wife for 9 years. She's never been anything but kind to Cassie. Cassie said she didn't want to get into it, but that it was her day and she wanted to be comfortable. She mentioned that her mom would be there and didn't want things to be awkward. That infuriated me. There has never been any animosity between Sarah and Cassie's mom. They've spoken at family events. Hell, they even sat next to each other at Cassie's graduation and chatted pleasantly. I told Cassie this was unacceptable. Either Sarah was included in the entire wedding or I wouldn't be part of it. Cassie pushed back hard. She said I was making things about me and that this was about her feelings, not Sarah's. I reminded her again that Sarah and I are a team. If she excludes my wife, she excludes me. We argued for over an hour. I kept asking why. Why exclude someone who's done nothing but support you and treat you well? She finally snapped and said, because she's not my real family. She's just someone you married. She doesn't belong there in my moment. That line hit me like a freight train. I told her I was pulling out of the wedding. I would not be attending, and I would not be paying another cent. I had already put down non-refundable deposits totaling about $18,000, but the rest, venue final payment, catering, photographer, DJ, all of it was still pending. Cassie freaked. She said I was ruining her life, humiliating her, and that she'd never forgive me. Jamie called me the next day and tried to mediate, saying we could compromise and let Sarah sit in the back during the ceremony if that would make things easier. I told him absolutely not. My wife wasn't some pariah to be hidden in the shadows. Word got out. Cassie's mom called and said I was being selfish and vindictive, that I was punishing my daughter for having boundaries. My ex and I haven't spoken much over the years, but she's always been polite. This time, she went off on me. Said Sarah must have brainwashed me, that I was choosing my new wife over my daughter. I told her that's not what this is. This is about respect. Sarah, for her part, told me I didn't have to do all this, that she would stay home if it meant Cassie would have her day. But I refused. I told her that we don't accept invitations with caveats. We don't tolerate being treated like outsiders in our own family. Now it's 3 weeks out. Cassie and Jamie are scrambling. They've cut down the guest list. Jamie's parents are chipping in what they can. I'm still out nearly 20 grand, but I don't regret the decision. Some of my friends say I did the right thing. Others say I overreacted and that it's her wedding, not mine. Even my brother thinks I should have just gone and let Sarah sit out to keep the peace. But peace at what cost? Sarah cried when I told her what Cassie said about her. I can't forget that. So, Reddit. AITA for canceling my daughter's wedding after she disrespected my wife like that. AITA for refusing to share my wedding day with my terminally ill sister. So I, 29F, got married 3 months ago to my now husband, Drew, 31M. It was a day I'd been dreaming about since I was a teenager, and after 2 years of planning, saving, and navigating COVID postponements, it finally happened. The venue was this old vineyard estate my grandparents had taken me to as a kid. The date was symbolic too, exactly 5 years after Drew and I met. Everything was meaningful and, to me, perfect. That's why it still hurts so much that it was nearly taken from me, and that I'm now painted as a selfish, heartless person by much of my family. The conflict centers around my older sister, Emily, 33F, who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last year. It was devastating, obviously. She was given 12 to 18 months, and as of now, she's still going through treatment, but it's clear she doesn't have much time. I love my sister. We've always been close. She was my matron of honor. But here's where things get complicated. About 4 months before my wedding, Emily approached me and said she wanted to get married too, to her longtime boyfriend, Nate, 36M. They've been together on and off for over a decade, and he proposed when they found out about her diagnosis. At first, I was thrilled for her. I told her I'd help with anything she needed. But then she said they didn't want to plan a full wedding because of time, money, and her health. Understandable. However, Emily suggested, very casually at first, that maybe she could borrow some time at my wedding. She floated the idea of having a joint ceremony, or doing a mini ceremony for her and Nate during our reception, or even just letting them say vows before my walk down the aisle. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. At first, I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. I told her as gently as I could that I didn't think that would be a good idea. I explained that Drew and I had already planned everything down to the minute, and that the day was really important to us. I offered to help her plan a beautiful, intimate ceremony the weekend before or after, something small and lovely, and I'd cover the cost. I even said I'd donate my bridal bouquet and get her a makeup artist and photographer. But she wasn't happy with that. She kept pushing. My mom got involved and started pressuring me too, saying things like, "You'll have more weddings in your life. This might be Emily's only one." That line crushed me. I felt like such a villain, but I also felt like my wedding day was slipping away. Drew backed me up entirely. He was calm about it, but firm. He said we could be supportive without compromising something we'd worked years for. My dad was more neutral, saying it was a tough situation all around. The pressure didn't let up. At family dinners, people kept bringing it up. Some of Emily's friends even messaged me privately saying I should do the right thing. One called me a cold bridezilla. I started to dread even talking to anyone. I cried a lot during what should have been the happiest stretch of wedding planning. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily called and said she and Nate had decided to honor my wishes and not do anything at the wedding. I thanked her. I truly did appreciate it. I hoped we could finally move forward. But then the day arrived. Everything was beautiful. The ceremony, the weather, the food, the music. Drew looked amazing. I felt like a literal queen. For a few hours, it really was perfect. Until the reception. Emily showed up in a long white dress. I'll never forget it. It wasn't a wedding dress per se, but it was formal, floor-length, and ivory. She didn't tell me she was wearing that. My bridesmaids were all in sage green, and everyone else was dressed like guests. But she stood out. Then, during her speech as my matron of honor, she said, "Today is a celebration of love. And while we're here to honor Drew and me, I also want to take a moment to honor another love, mine and Nate's." She pulled him up to the mic. They said impromptu vows, right there in the middle of my reception. There was applause. People thought it was sweet. Some were crying. I just stood there frozen. I couldn't even process it. Drew held my hand under the table, and I saw his jaw clench, but he didn't say anything. Neither did I. What could I say? Afterward, Emily came up to me beaming and asked if I'd like the surprise. I was numb. I smiled weakly. Later in the night, I went to the bathroom and cried. When I got back, I told Drew I wanted to leave early. We did. We left without fanfare, just quietly slipped out. In the weeks since, the family group chats have been full of praise for Emily's bravery and how touching her vows were. A few people even posted on Facebook about Emily and Nate's wedding night, as if it was their event. My wedding has become a footnote. Even our photographer was confused when I asked for specific shots. She said she thought it was a shared wedding and edited some photos to spotlight Emily and Nate, assuming it was intentional. I finally confronted Emily privately. I told her what she did was deeply hurtful and violated my trust. I said I felt like my wedding had been hijacked. She looked genuinely shocked. She said she thought it was a beautiful gesture and that she had gotten the idea from a friend who'd done something similar at her sister's wedding. She said she thought I'd be moved, not mad. When I didn't forgive her on the spot, she started crying and said she didn't know how long she had left, and now she'd wasted time trying to celebrate both of us. I left before I said something I regret. Now my mom is furious with me. She says Emily is sick, and I'm choosing resentment over compassion. Several aunts have said I should just let it go because life is short. Even my dad suggested I write Emily a letter to clear the air before it's too late. But I can't help feeling like I was robbed. And the more people push me to forgive, the angrier I get. I've barely looked at my wedding album. I haven't sent thank you cards yet. The whole thing feels tainted. So, Reddit, I need to know. AITA for refusing to share my wedding day with my terminally ill sister and still being angry that she did anyway. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for canceling a trip I planned and paid for after my friends changed the vibe. So I, 29F, have always been the planner in my friend group. I love organizing events, dinners, game nights, even trips. It's never felt like a burden to me until recently, and now I'm wondering if I've just been getting taken advantage of. Back in December, I started planning a week-long trip for my close friend group of 6 people, 3 women including me, and 3 guys. We've all been friends since college, and we've done weekend getaways before, but this was going to be our first big vacation, an international trip to Portugal. I took the lead, researched destinations, booked flights, found and secured an amazing Airbnb in Lisbon with a terrace and view, made dinner reservations, even created shared dock with optional day trips like wine tasting in the Douro Valley and a beach day in Cascais. Everyone was excited, at least at the beginning. I got verbal commitments from everyone, and I fronted the cost of the Airbnb and flights to lock in cheaper rates. Everyone promised to pay me back by mid-February. Only 2 people did. By March, I was still out over $3,000. I had to follow up with people multiple times. The responses were always casual. Oh yeah, I'll Venmo you this week. Or sorry, totally forgot. One guy, Tom, even said he had to pay off a credit card bill first, but would definitely get it to me before April. I was starting to feel more like a debt collector than a friend. On top of that, sometime in March, the group chat started shifting. The tone changed. My original itinerary was getting trashed little by little. Comments like, "Are we really doing all of this?" Or "That's kind of touristy, don't you think?" They started joking about just winging it and finding where the locals go. I wouldn't have minded if they just wanted a looser plan. But they also started inviting other people. At first, one guy, Mike, said his new girlfriend might come for a couple of days. Then, another friend, Sarah, asked if she could bring her cousin who really needs a break. Suddenly, a trip I had organized for 6 close friends was ballooning into a 10-plus person free-for-all, with people I didn't even know. No one asked me before extending invites. I only found out after they had already told the people it was fine. I voiced my concerns, mostly about the logistics, the Airbnb only having 3 bedrooms, and the fact that I'd booked everything with a certain group in mind. They kind of brushed me off, said we could make it work, and that it would be fun to have more people. At this point, only 2 people had paid me back in full. The rest were still dragging their feet. The final straw came when I saw in our group chat that they were planning a surprise birthday dinner for Mike's girlfriend in Lisbon, at a different restaurant than the one I had already reserved for that night. I wasn't even part of that side conversation. Someone accidentally posted a screenshot from the other chat they had going. I was pissed, not because they wanted to celebrate her birthday, but because it was clear they had shifted the trip's focus. It was no longer the chill, cultural, semi-planned vacation I had designed for our group. It was turning into a chaotic, who knows who's coming, party-heavy, free-for-all. And I was still on the hook financially. So I canceled everything I booked under my name. I told the group that I wasn't comfortable going anymore, given the direction things had taken and the lack of communication and respect. I gave a week's notice before the Airbnb cancellation deadline. We'd still get most of the deposit back, and contacted the airline about issuing flight credits, which I made sure were transferable. I sent everyone back whatever portion of their money I could return, which, for the 4 who hadn't paid me, was 0, and told them I was out. Well, the reaction was nuclear. Sarah called me selfish and accused me of holding the trip hostage because I wasn't getting my way. Tom said I had a control complex and needed to learn how to go with the flow. Mike was the most aggressive, texting me that I had ruined his girlfriend's birthday and that I owed them for the inconvenience. Even my closest friend in the group, Jess, was disappointed. She said she understood where I was coming from, but that I pulled the rug out from everyone and should have just let the trip happen, even if it didn't go the way I planned. I told them I wasn't stopping anyone from still going. I even offered to send them the itinerary and info so they could rebook parts of it themselves. But they were mad that I had canceled everything so close to the trip, and now they had to scramble. Now, a few people in the group aren't talking to me at all, and others are distant. Jess and I are still friends, but even she seems kind of off with me. Here's where I might be the asshole. I know I'm a planner. I know I can be intense when I organize stuff, and maybe I did take too much ownership over a group vacation. Maybe I was too rigid and couldn't accept that things change. Maybe I should have just rolled with it and enjoyed whatever kind of trip it turned into. But I honestly felt used. No one stepped up to help. I was financially on the line for all of it. They changed the tone and people of the trip without asking me, and I just didn't feel excited about it anymore. Was it petty to cancel everything? Maybe. But I also felt like if I didn't draw a boundary, I'd just keep getting walked over. I've planned every major thing we've done for years, and this was the first time I really said no. So, AITA for canceling the trip I planned when everything started to change and people weren't paying me back. AITA for telling my fiancé's parents the real reason I don't want to invite her sister to our wedding. My fiancé, Marissa, 29F, and I, 31M, have been together for 5 years and engaged for about 9 months. We're planning a fairly intimate wedding, around 80 guests, mostly close family and friends. We agreed early on that we wanted the day to be peaceful, joyful, and drama-free. Marissa has one younger sister, Talia, 26F, who has always been a bit of a wild card. To be blunt, Talia has a history of being a manipulative attention seeker. I don't say that lightly. I've watched her crash family dinners with personal dramas, fake medical emergencies, and even one instance where she claimed she was being stalked by an ex, only to admit later that she fabricated it to get people to listen to her for once. Over the years, I've mostly kept my distance. I'm polite, but I avoid engaging with her beyond small talk. Marissa, for all her strengths, has always been a bit blind when it comes to Talia. She defends her, makes excuses, or downplays things. I get it. It's her sister, but it's also frustrating. Last year, Talia almost ruined our engagement dinner. She showed up visibly intoxicated, wearing a white, floor-length dress. Yes, at an engagement party that was clearly semi-formal, and at one point burst into tears, claiming she was afraid no one would ever love her. It derailed the entire evening. Marissa had to take her outside to calm her down for almost 40 minutes while our guests sat awkwardly waiting to get back to the celebration. When I gently suggested after the fact that maybe we should set boundaries for future events, Marissa agreed in theory, but said she'll be better next time. She just had a rough week. So, when we started talking guest list, I asked Marissa point blank, "What's the plan with Talia?" Marissa was quiet for a long time and then said, "I want her there, but I understand your hesitation. Maybe we could give her a smaller role. No speech, no standing up with me." I asked her, "What's the likelihood she'll make a scene?" And Marissa hesitated, then said, "I don't know. Maybe 50-50. That was enough for me. I told her I didn't want Talia at the wedding. Cue the weeks-long arguments. Marissa tried to negotiate. What if we assign her a handler? What if we seat her with my cousins and make sure there's someone sober near her the whole night? What if she agrees to a behavior contract? It started to sound less like wedding planning and more like preparing for a hostage negotiation. Eventually, I held my ground. I said, "I love you. I want to marry you. But this is our day. One day, And I refused to spend it watching Talia like a hawk or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Marissa cried. She said I was putting her in an impossible position. That family is forever, and she couldn't just exclude her only sister. I didn't budge. We reached an uneasy compromise. Talia would not be invited to the wedding, but Marissa wouldn't be the one to tell her parents or Talia. She didn't want to be in the middle. I reluctantly agreed to shoulder that part. So last week, we had dinner with Marissa's parents, Mark and Ellen, who were generally warm and level-headed people. After dinner, I explained, calmly and respectfully, that we were keeping the wedding small and that we'd made the difficult decision not to include Talia due to past behavior and our desire for a peaceful celebration. I was as diplomatic as I could be. I said we loved Talia, but didn't trust that the day would remain about us if she were there. Ellen went quiet. Mark got this tight-lipped look and just nodded. It wasn't a blow-up, but it was clearly tense. Later that night, all hell broke loose. Talia called Marissa sobbing, saying I was trying to erase her from the family. She posted vague things on social media. It hurts when people you thought loved you turn out to be liars, and unfollowed both of us. Marissa's parents called her separately and asked, "Is this really what you want? To start your marriage by cutting out your sister?" Apparently, my talk with them had spiraled into full-blown drama. Marissa confronted me and said I had humiliated her family, that she never expected me to be so brutal with them. I reminded her she had asked me to handle it, and I did so respectfully. She said, "They think this was your decision alone. You made it sound like I don't want her there either." I told her I said we made the decision, but she insists I framed it all in a way that made her look spineless. Now she's cold, distant, and seems to be rethinking a lot more than just a guest list. I'm at a loss. I genuinely feel I did what was necessary to protect our wedding day from chaos. I'm tired of being the bad guy because I won't coddle Talia or play along with the family charade that she's just a little dramatic. I wanted one day, just one, that was free from her disruptions. I'm not asking her to cut contact forever, just this one boundary. Still, I'm watching the woman I love withdraw from me, and it hurts. I keep wondering, was I too firm? Should I have just swallowed my pride and hoped for the best? Or is this what standing up for your own peace looks like? So, AITA for telling my fiancé's parents the real reason I don't want her sister at our wedding. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after she insulted my home and made me uncomfortable. So, to give some context, my husband Jake, 32, and I, Maggie, 30, have been married for 3 years, and we've been living in a house we bought together about a year ago. It's a modest home, not too big, but we've worked hard on it. We've done a lot of the renovations ourselves, and we're really proud of what we've built. It's cozy and feels like home. Now, Jake's sister, Kate, 28, is a bit much. She's always been kind of spoiled and entitled, but in the last couple of years, she's become increasingly difficult to deal with. She has a lot of opinions about things that aren't really her business, and she's pretty vocal about her superior lifestyle choices, especially when it comes to money, home decor, and, well, pretty much everything. A little over a month ago, Kate and her fiancé, Chris, 30, had some issues with their apartment, and they needed a place to stay for a few weeks while they sorted things out. Of course, Jake and I offered to let them stay with us. It wasn't an ideal situation, but we both agreed it would be a temporary arrangement. The house isn't huge, but it's spacious enough for 2 extra people to crash for a little while. At first, everything was fine. Kate and Chris were respectful enough, and they didn't make a mess. But then, a few days in, things started to take a turn. I noticed Kate making little comments here and there about the house. Like, one day while we were having dinner, she said, "I can't believe you guys don't have granite countertops. I mean, it's such a small upgrade and adds so much value to a home." I just shrugged it off because I know our countertops are fine. They're not fancy, but they work for us. The next day, she made a comment about the color of the living room walls. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when she said, "The color in here is really beige, don't you think? You could probably do a lot with it, like some statement wall art, or maybe some fun accent pillows. You know, really elevate the space." I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable, but I kept it together. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just smiled and said, "Yeah, we're planning to update things a bit more down the line. But we like it for now." But then it got worse. One evening, Jake and I were in the kitchen cooking dinner, and Kate and Chris were in the living room watching TV. We were talking about our upcoming plans for a small family gathering when Kate walked into the kitchen and casually said, "You know, it's so weird to me that you guys don't have a guest bedroom. I mean, I guess you can't really host anyone overnight if you don't have a proper guest room. I thought you'd at least have a pull-out couch or something." She looked at me like I was crazy for not having a fully furnished guest bedroom. I felt my blood pressure rising. I know our house is not the most extravagant, but it's a two-bedroom house and the second bedroom is an office. We've got a pretty good setup for us, but we don't have a dedicated guest room because, well, we don't need one. We host family gatherings sometimes, but rarely do people stay the night. Before I could respond, Kate continued, "I mean, I guess I get it. You probably couldn't afford a place with more bedrooms on your budget." It was such a low blow, and I could feel myself getting heated. I've worked really hard to get where I am, and I don't appreciate being belittled about my choices. Jake was in the kitchen with me, and I could tell he was getting uncomfortable too, but he didn't say anything. He's always been the peacekeeper, and he doesn't like confrontation. A few days later, things took another turn. I was working from home in my office when Kate came in to chat. She sat down on the other side of my desk and started going on about how her life is so much more modern and fashionable than ours. She talked about her upcoming wedding plans, how much she was spending on decor, and how everything was going to be perfect. Eventually, she mentioned how she was planning to hire a personal organizer to help her with every little detail of her life. "I just feel like I'm always ahead of the curve, you know," she said casually. "Like, I wouldn't be able to function without my assistant and planner. It just makes everything easier." I wasn't in the mood for her condescending attitude, and I finally snapped. "You know, Kate, not everyone needs a personal assistant to get by. Some of us manage just fine without all that stuff." She looked taken aback for a second before she scoffed. "Well, I guess you wouldn't understand. You're not really into the whole luxury thing, are you?" I was furious. This was the final straw for me. I told her that while I appreciated her staying with us, I didn't feel comfortable with the constant comments about our home and our lifestyle choices. I told her that if she couldn't be respectful, I would prefer if she and Chris made other arrangements. It was only supposed to be a temporary stay, after all. She was quiet for a moment, but then she laughed and said, "Wow, Maggie, you really can't take a joke, can you? I was just giving you some advice to help improve things around here." I didn't respond to that. I just told her she needed to figure out where she was going and that I'd be happy to help her find a place. She seemed annoyed but said she'd stay at a friend's house instead. Jake was really upset with me after that. He said I overreacted and that I should have just let her stay for the rest of the week. He told me I should have been more patient with her and that I was being too sensitive. But I just couldn't tolerate her belittling me in my home anymore. I don't want to be constantly made to feel inferior in my own house. Now, my in-laws are involved and they're siding with Kate, telling me I was rude and should have just sucked it up because she's family. They say I should have been more understanding of how much stress she's under with the wedding and the apartment situation. So, AITA for telling my sister-in-law to leave after she insulted my home and made me uncomfortable. AITA for kicking my sister out of my house after she insulted my wife. I, 30M, have been married to my wife, 28F, for 2 years now. We met in college and have been inseparable since. My sister, Julia, 32F, and I have always had a bit of a complicated relationship. We grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household, and while I've always tried to be there for her, we've had our share of falling outs. She's always been a bit of a drama queen, and we often butt heads because of her behavior. In the beginning of our relationship, my wife and I set some pretty clear boundaries with each other, and one of those boundaries was respecting our families. We both agreed that we would not tolerate any toxic or disrespectful behavior from our relatives. My wife's family is wonderful, and I think that's part of why I'm so protective of her. She deserves peace and respect, something I didn't always have growing up. A few months ago, we invited Julia to stay with us for a few weeks. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend and needed a place to crash. Normally, I'd have offered her the spare room, no questions asked, but I consulted my wife first to make sure she was okay with it. She agreed, but only on the condition that Julia respected the rules of our home. That meant no late-night parties, no bringing strangers over, and, most importantly, no insults or disrespect aimed at either of us. Julia agreed, though I was a little suspicious of her commitment. She's known to be a little self-centered, and I've had issues with her in the past where she'd take advantage of me or my generosity. For the first few weeks, things were fine. Julia kept to herself, mostly, and it seemed like we were all getting along. She didn't bring anyone over, and there were no issues. But a few days ago, things took a major turn. It started with a casual conversation over dinner. My wife and I were talking about some new recipes she had been experimenting with. And Julia, who had been quiet up until that point, suddenly chimed in with an offhand comment about how it's cute that my wife tries so hard in the kitchen. My wife, being the kind-hearted person she is, didn't think much of it and laughed it off. But I could tell Julia's tone was condescending, and I could see a hint of a smirk on her face. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to cause a scene, but I felt the tension rising. The next day, Julia did again. She made some comment about how my wife's taste in home decor was so quaint, like it was some kind of insult wrapped in a compliment. Again, my wife tried to be polite, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. I knew that Julia was testing boundaries, trying to provoke some sort of reaction. At this point, I was getting fed up, but I didn't want to escalate things. I talked to my wife in private, and we agreed that we needed to confront Julia if it happened again. And it did. That night, while we were watching a movie, Julia leaned in and started making fun of my wife's outfit, saying she looked like someone's mom and asking if she ever bought clothes that were in style. My wife tried to laugh it off, but I could see she was getting visibly upset. That's when I finally had enough. I told Julia that she needed to stop insulting my wife. She acted all innocent, saying, "Oh, I was just joking. You know I love you both," but I could tell it wasn't just a joke. It was a pattern of passive-aggressive comments that were clearly meant to undermine my wife and put her down. I told her that if she couldn't respect our home and my wife, then it was time for her to leave. Julia immediately got defensive, accusing me of taking sides and being overprotective of my wife. She said I was being so dramatic and that she was just being honest. I tried to explain that honesty is one thing, but constant digs and insults are not acceptable, especially when it's aimed at someone I love. She didn't care. Instead, she started packing her things and gave me a dramatic, "I don't need this" speech before storming out. My wife was shocked, and while she didn't want to make a big deal out of it, I could see how hurt she was by the whole thing. I felt guilty for kicking Julia out, but at the same time, I felt like I was protecting my wife, who's always been kind and welcoming to my family. Julia has always had a way of making things about her, and I just couldn't stand to watch her continue disrespecting my wife like that. The next day, my mom called me and yelled at me for kicking Julia out. She said I was being too harsh and that I shouldn't have overreacted. She accused me of being an enabler to my wife and said I should have handled things more calmly. But honestly, I don't think I was wrong. My wife is an adult and could defend herself, but I'm not going to let anyone treat her like that, especially not family. I'm now getting mixed reactions from the rest of the family. Some think I did the right thing, while others believe I should have just let it go and not made such a big deal out of it. I keep thinking about what my wife went through, how hurt she looked when Julia made those comments, and I wonder if maybe I should have handled it differently. So, Reddit, AITA for kicking my sister out of my house after she insulted my wife multiple times? AITA for refusing to help my sister pay off her debt after she lied to me about her financial situation? So, this all started about 6 months ago when my sister, let's call her Jessica, came to me asking for a loan. She's a few years older than me, and I've always looked up to her. Growing up, she was the responsible one, the one who had her life together. She had a stable job, a nice apartment, and seemed like she was in a good place. I, on the other hand, was still figuring things out, but I had a decent job, and while I wasn't wealthy, I had managed to save up a good amount of money over the years. One day, Jessica came to me looking really stressed out. She said that she had fallen behind on some bills and needed help getting back on track. She told me that she had been going through some tough times at work and had been trying to balance everything, but it had gotten overwhelming. She promised me that it was just a temporary setback and that she would be able to pay me back as soon as she got back on her feet. She said she would be in a better place in just a few months and everything would go back to normal. I had a decent amount of savings, so I decided to help her out. I thought I was doing the right thing, especially because she was my sister and I wanted to support her. I lent her a substantial amount, about $15,000. She promised me she would pay me back in full within 6 months. It felt like a lot of money at the time, but I trusted her and I really believed she would keep her word. Well, a few months passed and I started getting anxious. I didn't hear much from Jessica, and the due date for her repayment was getting closer. I had reached out to her a few times, and every time she would tell me things like, "I'm so sorry, things are still tight, but I'll pay you as soon as I can." I try to be patient because I understood that life can be unpredictable, but I also needed to start planning my own finances. I had bills, a mortgage, and a lot of other responsibilities, so I couldn't afford to just keep waiting forever. Then about a month ago, things took a turn. I overheard a conversation between Jessica and her friend when they didn't realize I was around. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose, but I heard her saying something that made my blood boil. She was talking about how she had splurged on a vacation with some friends and had been buying expensive clothes and gadgets. She even mentioned that she had recently upgraded her car. This really hit me hard because I had been under the impression that she was struggling and had no money, yet here she was spending on luxuries. I confronted her about it the next day. I told her I'd overheard the conversation and asked why she hadn't mentioned any of this to me when I was asking for updates on the loan repayment. At first, she tried to deny everything, but eventually she admitted to buying things she couldn't afford. She said that she just needed some retail therapy because everything in her life felt overwhelming. She claimed it wasn't a big deal and she'd pay me back soon. But I was furious. I felt completely betrayed. I had given her $15,000 to help her through a rough patch, and instead of using that money wisely, she was blowing it on things she didn't need. I told her I couldn't trust her anymore and that I wanted the money back immediately. She started to cry and begged me to give her more time. She said she was sorry and didn't know why she had done it, but that she was going through a phase and had learned her lesson. She promised it would never happen again, but at that point, I had lost all faith in her. I told her I couldn't do it anymore and that I wasn't going to wait around while she spent money on things she didn't need. I said I'd help her figure out a budget or look into other ways to get her finances back on track, but the loan was no longer up for discussion. I was done. She got really upset and said that I was being heartless and that family is supposed to support each other no matter what. After that conversation, things have been awkward between us. Our family has been caught in the middle of it all, with some members saying I was right and others saying I was being too harsh. My mom especially has been upset with me. She keeps telling me that I should just forgive Jessica and help her out. She says that Jessica has been through a lot and that it was just a mistake and I shouldn't punish her for it. But honestly, I don't know if I can forgive her. She lied to me and didn't even seem to care about repaying me. Now I'm torn. I feel like I did the right thing by standing my ground and not letting her off the hook, but I also don't want to lose my relationship with her forever. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to help my sister pay off her debt after she lied to me about her financial situation. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because I'm uncomfortable with her fiancé. So this situation has been bothering me for a while, and I'm not sure if I'm being too dramatic or unreasonable, so I thought I'd ask here. A little background. I, 28F, have been friends with Rachel, 29F, for over a decade. We met in high school and became inseparable. Rachel and I have been through a lot together. Family issues, breakups, career changes, and everything in between. We're the kind of friends who know all the embarrassing stories about each other and still have each other's backs, no matter what. Recently, Rachel got engaged to a guy named Tom, 31M, and while I was initially happy for her, I've started feeling increasingly uncomfortable about their relationship. Rachel and I always had a pretty close relationship, and she'd confide in me about all her relationships, past and present. However, when she started dating Tom, things started to feel different. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Tom was charming, and Rachel seemed so happy. But over time, I started noticing some red flags in their relationship that made me uneasy. It's hard to put my finger on it, but I'll try to explain. Tom has always been super possessive and controlling in small, subtle ways. For example, Rachel would tell me that he would get upset if she didn't reply to his texts right away, or if she made plans without consulting him first. At first, I thought it was just a case of him being overly attentive, but then I started noticing it was more than that. Whenever Rachel would bring up plans to hang out with me or other friends, he would subtly discourage it, and sometimes even guilt-trip her into canceling plans. He would make comments like, "I thought we were going to spend the weekend together," and she would end up choosing him over hanging out with the rest of us. Now, I know relationships have ups and downs, and no one is perfect, but it started feeling like Rachel was losing herself. She became more isolated, and I started to feel like she was changing into someone I didn't recognize. I tried to talk to her about it a few times, but she always brushed it off, saying I didn't understand, and that Tom was just a bit protective because he loved her so much. Then, the engagement happened. At first, I was happy for her. At least, that's what I thought. But as the wedding plans started to take shape, my discomfort only grew. Tom was completely involved in every decision. I mean, every decision. From the guest list to the seating arrangement to the decorations. Tom seemed to have an opinion on everything. And honestly, it didn't sit right with me. Rachel, the girl I've known for years, was letting Tom dictate everything, including decisions that seemed trivial but were important to her. For example, she told me that Tom insisted they go with a particular venue even though she didn't like it because it was his family's tradition. She also mentioned that Tom wanted to invite a bunch of his friends from work, even though Rachel didn't really get along with them. But she caved because Tom said it was important. I try not to let these things bother me too much, but I started feeling increasingly alienated. It felt like Rachel was no longer the same person. The girl who used to be independent and assertive was now deferring to Tom's every wish. And I could see that she was starting to lose her voice in the relationship, even if she didn't realize it yet. Here's where I might be the asshole. Last month, Rachel called me up and asked if I was going to be attending her wedding. I hesitated. I'd already been feeling uncomfortable, but I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So, I asked her if everything was okay with her and Tom, and whether she felt like herself in the relationship. She got defensive and said I was being judgmental and that I shouldn't be worrying about things that didn't concern me. She said I was trying to ruin her happiness and that I should support her decision to marry Tom. She also pointed out that I had never been in a serious relationship and that I shouldn't judge hers. That stung, but I tried to move past it. The next week, I went over to her place to help her pick out wedding invitations, but I felt so uncomfortable with the way Tom was hovering over everything. He was constantly giving input and making sure Rachel didn't get carried away with any decisions. At one point, he even suggested we should cut down the guest list and not invite certain people because they weren't necessary. That was the tipping point for me. I told Rachel that I couldn't be a part of the wedding planning anymore. I said I was uncomfortable with how things were going with Tom and that I didn't feel like I could fully support the marriage. Rachel was really hurt and said that I was being unreasonable and that I was trying to sabotage her happiness. She said it wasn't my place to question her choices and that if I didn't support her, then maybe I wasn't the kind of friend she thought I was. This is where I might really be the asshole. I told Rachel that I didn't want to attend the wedding. I didn't want to be there if she was going to marry someone who was so controlling and if I couldn't even talk to her without him getting involved. I told her that I cared about her too much to pretend everything was okay when I didn't think it was. I said I would be there for her no matter what, but I couldn't support this marriage. Rachel was absolutely devastated. She cried, and I could tell it really hurt her. She said I was abandoning her and that I was being selfish. I tried to explain that I was worried about her, but she said that I wasn't giving Tom a fair chance and that I needed to trust her judgment. Now she hasn't spoken to me for weeks, and I feel like I've lost my best friend. I know I might have overstepped by being so vocal about my discomfort, but I genuinely think Rachel is making a mistake. I want to be there for her, but I also don't want to enable her to make a choice I think will hurt her in the long run. So, AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding because I don't like her fiancé and feel uncomfortable with their relationship. AITA for telling my friend her wedding is a mistake. So I, 29F, have a friend, Kate, 28F, who is getting married in a couple of months. We've known each other since high school, and while we're not as close as we used to be, we still talk regularly, and I consider her a good friend. Kate met her fiancé, Ben, 30M, about 2 years ago. I had only met him a few times, but I always got a weird vibe from him. He has this cocky, alpha male attitude, and he makes a lot of offhand comments that come across as rude or dismissive, especially when it comes to Kate. He's always been pretty upfront about how much money he makes, his job, his lifestyle, and how much better he thinks his life is compared to others. He's also made some comments about how he settled for Kate, like it's a huge favor he's doing by marrying her. These things rub me the wrong way, and when I've mentioned it to Kate in passing, she brushes it off or defends him, saying he's just confident or misunderstood. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. Kate was telling me how excited she was about the wedding, but she also mentioned she was having some last-minute doubts. I asked her what she meant by that, and she said she's worried that maybe Ben isn't the right person for her, but she feels like she's too far along to back out now. Apparently, Ben had been getting increasingly controlling in the months leading up to the wedding. He's been telling her that she should quit her job because he makes enough money for both of them, and he thinks she should focus on their future family and her role as a wife. He also has strong opinions about how Kate should dress, how she should act in public, and has even gone as far as saying she shouldn't be friends with certain people, including me. I was honestly shocked. I knew Ben was a bit arrogant, but I didn't realize how much control he had over her. When I pressed her about how she felt, she said that she's not sure if she should go through with it, but she's too scared of what will happen if she backs out now. She mentioned that everyone expects her to get married because they've already spent so much money on the wedding, and she doesn't want to disappoint her family or friends. I try to gently remind her that it's never too late to change her mind, and that getting married just because people expect you to is a huge mistake. I also told her that I didn't think Ben was a good match for her, and that it was concerning to hear about how controlling he's been. She looked at me with this shocked expression and asked if I thought she was making a mistake. I hesitated for a second, but then said, honestly, yes, I do think you're making a mistake. I think Ben is not the person you should marry. She started tearing up and told me I was being too harsh and that I didn't understand their relationship. She said Ben had a lot of good qualities that I don't see and that he's just trying to look out for her and protect her. I told her that it's one thing for someone to look out for you, but it's another thing for them to control your every move and tell you what to do. I also pointed out that I'd never seen her so unhappy, and I didn't want her to look back on this day and regret it. She got really upset and told me I was making her feel like she was dumb for even thinking about marrying him. She said I was being a bad friend, and that if I didn't support her decision, I shouldn't be a part of her wedding at all. I tried to explain that I was just worried for her, and that I would still support her no matter what decision she made, but she was too upset to listen. Now, I'm wondering if I crossed a line. I didn't want to make her feel bad, but I also felt like I couldn't just sit by and watch her marry someone who I think is bad for her. Some of our other friends have told me that I was right to speak up, but I'm still feeling conflicted. Should I have kept my mouth shut, even if I thought she was making a huge mistake? I don't want to lose her as a friend, but I also feel like I can't be silent when I see her heading into something that could hurt her. AITA for telling my friend her wedding is a mistake? AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because I was upset that she didn't ask me to be her maid of honor? So, a little background. I, 29F, have been best friends with Jessica, 29F, since we were both 6 years old. We've been through everything together: awkward teenage years, first loves, breakups, family drama, and even job struggles. We always promised each other that we'd be each other's maid of honor, no matter what. It was one of those promises that we thought was a given because we both considered each other to be the closest person in the world to us. For the record, we were in each other's weddings as bridesmaids in the past, so this whole thing seemed like a no-brainer. Jessica got engaged about a year ago. We had already been talking about it for months before she even got the ring, so I was incredibly excited for her. I figured I'd be the maid of honor, and she seemed to agree. She even talked about how she couldn't imagine getting married without me by her side. However, a few months ago, she asked me if I would be okay with her choosing her cousin, Lila, to be the maid of honor instead of me. She said it was because Lila was more involved in her life these days and that it would be nice to have a family member in the role. I was pretty shocked. Like, really shocked. I mean, I get that family is important, but Lila and I aren't even close. We've had a couple of awkward family gatherings together over the years, but that's about it. I felt like my entire friendship with Jessica had been brushed aside for someone she's only recently become close to. I told her that I was disappointed and confused, especially since we'd always talked about me being her maid of honor. She reassured me that she still wanted me to be heavily involved in the wedding, just not in the maid of honor role. She said I could still be her right-hand woman and help with planning, and that I'd be a bridesmaid. At the time, I tried to brush it off and tell myself that she still valued me, even if I wasn't the maid of honor. But as the wedding approached, I found it harder and harder to let it go. Every time I saw her with Lila, I felt a pang of jealousy and hurt. It didn't help that Jessica kept sending me photos of Lila's outfits, hair trials, and maid of honor moments. I tried my best to suppress my feelings, but it felt like she was giving Lila all the attention that I'd always assumed would be mine. I was especially hurt when Jessica started asking me to help with all the small details for the wedding. Things like organizing the bridal shower, coordinating with vendors, and even running errands for her. It felt like she was putting the weight of the wedding on my shoulders while simultaneously not valuing me enough to put me in the spotlight for a role I felt I earned. It felt like I was her backup, not her best friend. A few weeks before the wedding, I had a conversation with Jessica where I told her how much I was struggling with all of this. I told her that while I understood she had a right to choose whoever she wanted for her maid of honor, I felt completely overlooked and disrespected. I even told her that I was starting to feel like I wasn't as important to her as I once thought. She told me that I was being dramatic and that it wasn't about me, but about Lila being closer to her lately. At that point, I decided that I just couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was being asked to put on a happy face while dealing with so many emotions that I couldn't shake. It wasn't just about not being maid of honor. It was about how everything had changed in our friendship. I decided to tell Jessica that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I knew it was a drastic move, but I felt like I needed to stand up for myself, especially since I had been trying to suppress my feelings for so long. I told her that I couldn't be part of the celebration that felt so hurtful to me. I told her I loved her and wished her all the best, but I needed some space because I felt like my friendship with her had been undervalued. She was devastated and said I was being selfish. She called me after and texted me multiple times, trying to convince me to reconsider, but my decision was made. I couldn't bring myself to be at a wedding where I felt like a second-class friend. Now, my family and mutual friends are telling me that I'm being petty and should just go to the wedding because it's her special day and it's not about me. Some of them even said that I should suck it up and not make everything about my feelings. They say I'm being overdramatic and that I'll regret not being there for my best friend on such an important day. I feel like I should have gotten a more significant role, but I'm also starting to wonder if I overreacted. Should I just swallowed my pride and gone, even though I felt like I was being treated unfairly? Was I wrong to choose to step away instead of being the supportive best friend I've always been? AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she invited my ex, who is the reason we broke up. I, 29F, have a sister, 31F, who is getting married in a few months, and I'm feeling like I'm in a pretty awkward situation. It's been a rough year for me, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong for how I'm handling it. Here's some background. I've been in a relationship with my ex, 33M, for about 4 years. Things were going great at first, but I started noticing some red flags. One of the biggest issues was his friendship with my sister, Emily. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just me being overly protective, but the more I noticed, the more it bothered me. Emily and my ex were always texting or hanging out, even without me being there. She'd go out with him for coffee or chill sessions where they'd talk about personal stuff like their relationships, which felt a little odd to me. When I brought it up, Emily would tell me I was overreacting and that they were just friends. I tried to trust her, but there were too many times when I caught them being overly touchy or getting a little too close for comfort. Still, I didn't want to be the jealous girlfriend, so I kept quiet for a while. Things started to escalate when my ex and I were having a rough patch. We'd fight a lot about little things, and I wasn't feeling heard. I felt like he wasn't really there for me emotionally anymore. One night, I caught my ex and my sister in a moment that I could not ignore. I'd come home early from work one evening, and I overheard them talking in the living room. I thought they were just having a normal conversation at first, but then I heard him say something like, "I don't know if I should tell her, but I think we need to talk about what happened last weekend. I froze. I walked into the room to find both of them looking guilty. My sister quickly jumped up, saying it wasn't what I thought, but my ex just stood there. I asked him what was going on, and he finally admitted that they had kissed during a late-night hangout a few weeks prior. He apologized, said it meant nothing, and insisted he was still in love with me. My sister, on the other hand, just stared at the floor and said nothing. At that moment, I just couldn't take it anymore. I broke up with him right there. I couldn't look at either of them. I felt betrayed by both of them, especially Emily, who I thought was my best friend. To this day, I still don't understand how she could do that to me. The breakup was really hard. I had to cut both of them out of my life entirely. Emily tried to reach out and apologize, but I couldn't find it in me to forgive her. I blocked both her and my ex from my life and moved on as best I could. It took me a few months to start feeling normal again, and I've since gotten into a much healthier relationship with someone I trust completely. Now, Emily is getting married, and she sent me an invitation. The problem is she invited my ex. I was shocked. I thought this was a pretty blatant slap in the face, considering how she knows how much damage was done. She didn't even try to offer an explanation as to why he'd be invited, but I'm assuming it's because he's one of her old friends, and she didn't want to hurt his feelings. But I'm not going to lie. This invitation feels like she's trying to sweep everything under the rug. When I got the invite, I called her and asked her if she seriously thought it was a good idea to invite him. She responded by saying that she and my ex had worked through things, and they were on good terms now. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her that she was out of line and that I wasn't comfortable attending a wedding where he would be there. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying that it was her big day and that I should put the past behind me for the sake of family. I explained to her that it wasn't just about me and my ex. It was about the fact that she had violated my trust in such a deep way, and inviting him felt like I was being forced to be okay with it all. She told me that I was being unreasonable, that the past was in the past, and that she couldn't change what happened. She then mentioned that I was being selfish for not wanting to support her on her wedding day. She even said that if I didn't come, it would ruin her day because it would cause drama within the family. I spent the last few days going back and forth on this. I don't want to cause any drama, and I love my sister, but I just don't think I can handle being around him at such a big event. I also feel like by showing up, I'd be condoning her actions and pretending like everything is fine, which it's not. On the other hand, I feel guilty because I know how much she wants me there, and I don't want to be the reason her wedding day is anything less than perfect. I've considered not going and just sending a gift, but I don't want to seem like I'm avoiding the situation entirely. I've also thought about talking to my parents to see what they think, but they've always been a bit more lenient about things like this and tend to side with Emily, because she's the oldest. I know I've been pretty clear about why I don't want to attend, but I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong here. Should I just suck it up and go for the sake of family? Or am I justified in refusing to be in the same space as my ex, given everything that happened? AITA? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.